Well, here we are, episode 2, Old Man Gasbagging. You know, I've been thinking over the last week exactly what I would chat to you about on this second episode of my channel. And there are just so many topics, so many things that one could make a comment on. Of course, in the last week there has been the magnificent entertainment that's been provided by the United States of America with the inauguration of Donald Trump and the subsequent comments that he's made and official changes to policy and everything else that everyone knew about, obviously, because he campaigned on those things. But the speed with which he has implemented changes, much to the more than annoyance, much to the anger and disgust of a lot of people, Democrats in particular, and people on the left of the centre around the world. But the thing that I think we have to remember is that a majority of people in the United States voted him in. They wanted change. There was something fundamentally wrong with what was happening in that country and what is still happening for that matter. And outrage is present on both sides of the political spectrum, but things swing. The pendulum always swings back and forth over time. If you look at the last 100 years in any democracy, the left gets in, the right gets in, the left gets in, and sometimes there are varying periods of time, varying terms of office that apply, but generally the public just gets fed up with a particular course of action or a particular stance or a particular direction that a government is going in. That will always be the case, simply because people think differently. Not everyone is of the same mind as each one of us. And whatever your political persuasion, you have to learn to work with the regime that is in power at the time. You have to be a survivor in a sort of in the sense of being an elector. You can't roll over and say, I'm going to leave the country, I've had it with this country, this is disgusting, I can't believe that such a buffoon has been elected. And when I say that, I'm not particularly referring to anyone in power. I'm not referring to Donald Trump. It could be Biden, it could be Trump or whatever. Whoever is in power is going to draw negative comment from the other side, or the side that has not been successful in winning power. And the weird thing is, of course, is that when someone comes to power, they just undo the work that the previous, their predecessors have put in place. And it just seems, is that a way forward, or is it just a ridiculous thing to do, a spiteful thing to do? But of course, political philosophies can be diametrically opposed to one another, so it's understandable that this is going to happen. There will be this frenetic flurry of activity where things are enacted, things are taken place immediately upon the new president assuming power, and that's what we've seen. But for all of that, I think there are people on both sides of the political spectrum in the United States who are probably heaving some sort of a sigh of relief that there is a person in the hot seat who is a person of action, someone who's not going to sit back and waffle on and talk about doing this and talk about doing that. He's going to get on with the job. Whether you like what he's doing or not, he is getting on with it. And I think it is a fundamental feeling that people have that actions speak louder than words. Of course they do. It's a truth. And I think some of the things that our friend Mr. Trump is doing have to be seen as particularly unpalatable and particularly unsavoury and horrendous to some people. there are those in the community in America who will be very afraid at the moment. And I see that as unfortunate. I think that's probably extreme, that he's come down hard on sectors of the community who don't conform to mainstream thinking. And I worry about that to an extent. Other things that he is doing and has done, I find particularly exciting in the sense that we have seen things that have taken place over the last few years, not just in America but in many countries of the world, where things have swung too far one way. And I'd have to say that the left does get pretty hot under the collar and very vocal and angry if they don't get their own way. They have swept through the world, they've contaminated, in my view, the universities of the world, so much so that I think if you were an employer looking at graduates from particular universities in the USA, and indeed in other parts of the world, in particular Australia, and we might focus on Melbourne for that, in Victoria, you would be very reticent in wanting to employ individuals who'd been through that system and arguably had been indoctrinated to the extent of making themselves unemployable in a general sense. So that's another topic for discussion. I'm not wanting to convey to you a suggestion that I am a far-right thinking individual. I tend to be straight down the middle. I don't like extremes either side. You may or may not be of a similar mind. At the end of the day, I don't care. This is my channel, and I say what suits me. But love you anyway. Love every one of you, and I hope you keep watching. And I think that's long enough for this one. We'll prattle on next week. I've just got to work out how to turn this off.